This video about a budget Noyan Dar deck. Now, Noyan Dar, the Royal Shaper, 3 white blue, 4/4 Merfolk ally, type doesn't matter. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery, you may put that 3+1/+1 counters on target land you control. If you do, that land is a 0/0 elemental creature with haste. It's still a land. Now, this deck is essentially nukes. The whole premise of it, and you will see that, is that it just explodes the universe in a very fun way. So it is a blue-white control deck, but it has a lot more tap-out strategies to it. It is not a tap-out deck. It's very close to it. Now, following that up, you're going to see a couple of phrases repeated over and over and over again. Let me center that up. That's a little better. Planar Cleansing. 3 triple white, destroy all non-land permanents. Huh. Tragic Arrogance. 3 white white. For each player you choose from among the permanents that player controls an artifact, a creature, enchantment, and a planeswalker. Then that player sacrifices all non-land permanents again. Alright, that's coming back up. Displacement Wave. X double blue. Return all non-land permanents with mana cost X or less to their owner's hand. The fact that it's a 2 caught 2x is actually going to come up later. And obviously if you set it at 4, Noyan Dar will survive and you'll just make more counters. Aethergale, 3 blue blue. Return 6 target non-land permanents to their owner's hand. Now, not quite a nuke, however, you're probably going to be resetting the board state so you have the biggest permanents out there. Also nice because if someone were to commandeer or cast this spell, they cannot hit your lands. Not very important, but worth knowing. Hour of Reckoning, 3 triple white. Hour of Reckoning costs 3 less if there are 10 or more non-land permanents on the battlefield. So you might be able to get off for 3 around mid-game, which is nice. Destroy all non-land permanents. Noticing a theme, I assume. River's Rebuke, 4 blue blue. Return all non-land permanents target player controls. Sort of a time walk on a single person. They're likely going to be out of the game. If you hit this in mid to late game, they're probably just going to get nailed out by your lands or by other players. Cataclysmic Gearhulk. So this is a 3 white white for a 4/5 with vigilance. When Cataclysmic Gearhulk enters the battlefield, each player chooses an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a planeswalker from among non-land permanents they control, then sacrifice the rest. Important here from Tragic Arrogance. Tragic Arrogance, you chose. Cataclysmic Gearhulk, the player chooses. Now, this guy can survive as your creature, this guy can survive as your artifact. You won't run a lot of artifacts, so you might be able to keep him, Noyan Dar, one of your enchantments. You really can end up on the positive side of this. Also, this guy's dirt cheap, which is awesome. Play of the game, 6 white white. It has assists, so other players can help pay. Exile all non-land permanents. Now, most likely, you're paying the full 8. You might be able to talk to some players if someone's comboing off, someone's playing like the Locust God, and they have a moment to breathe. You might be able to get some assist on that. I wouldn't bet on it, but the fact that it exiles is pretty nice. Mirror Weave. This comes up, and it's awesome. 2 and then 2 hybrid mana. Each other creature becomes a copy of target non-land creature until end of turn. Now, they obviously add the non-land because they didn't want it to be a board wipe. However, funny story, it is a board wipe. You have 0/0 elementals with counters on them. You actually have the ability at instant speed to absolutely just run roughshod, clear the board, you're left with your team, good to go, move on. Urza's Ruinous Blast, 4 and a white. You have to have a legendary creature or planeswalker. That's more or less your Noyan Dar. Exile all non-land permanents that aren't legendary. Again, it's not as good as it normally is because it will leave legendary, but it will also leave all your creatures plus your Noyan Dar. If someone isn't prepared for this, which usually they're not, you're probably going to at least clear one person out and be able to take them out that way. Devastating Tide has a miracle cost. You're usually going to be paying 3 blue blue. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. So your creatures, again, are still alive. Crusher Tentacles, 4 blue blue, has a surge cost of 3 blue blue, so if you played another spell, it costs less. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. If you paid the cost, you get an 8/8 Octopus. Always cool, but not necessary. That is 13 nukes right here, and there's another 1 or 2 in the next pile. So, already moving kind of fast. About, an eighth of your deck is about going absolutely nuclear. So, semi-redundancy, but also synergistic. Awaken spells in blue-white. You have a nuke. 3 white white, destroy all non-land creatures. For 5 and triple white, you can get 4 counters. Now, this brings up the going wide or going tall strategy. Noyan Dar has to be able to operate in 2 forms. Going tall, do you want a 10-10 and like a 6-6 and nothing else? Or going wide, do you want like a 4-4, a 2-2, a 3-3, a 3-3? You can have as many small creatures, or just keep piling the counters on there. Noyan Dar and the Awaken just say you put the counters on the land and it becomes a 0/0. The 0/0 is redundant. From here, Coastal Discovery, 3 blue, sorcery speed inspiration, you draw 2 cards, not great. However, if you're paying 6, you get 4 counters and the draw 2. That's not bad, not the greatest thing ever at sorcery speed, still has its uses. This one is actually unique, I shouldn't say unique, but very useful. 2 and a white, prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by creatures target opponent controls. Encircling Fissure here is an instant. This and Scatter to the Winds are the instant speed Awaken cards, so backing up Noyan Dar at instant speed is huge. Yes, the Awaken cost is 4 and a white and you're only getting a 2/2 out of it. I know that's not a great deal. However, if you're boosting another creature, getting one more creature on the battlefield, just making another target, this does some lifting. If it comes to cuts, I seriously would not cut this because being instant speed is huge. Scatter the Winds, 1 blue, counter target spell. So it's cancel with an extra option. If you pay 4 blue, you get 3 counters and a counter spell. Again, it does some heavy lifting. Don't expect to be playing all these spells for their Awaken cost. This is an extra mode. You need to think of it, the way you would in a limited game where these are extras. Part the Water Veil. 4 blue, Awaken cost is 6 triple blue. Take an extra turn, exile this. There are other ways to make this thing work and go crazy, but effectively it really just is take an extra turn. If you can get the Awaken cost, and in this deck it's very possible, maybe go for it. You have to kind of think around this. Now, why am I running Awaken cards? Why am I running on about them? Believe it or not, it's because of one card. 2 and a blue, it's a 2/3. When it comes into play, you may return target card with Awaken from your graveyard to your hand. This, while in play, also gives your land creatures flying. So it both gives the bonus to give them flying. You wouldn't play it just for this, but you tack on the ability to return a spell to your hand. That is very valuable. These spells are not perfect. I will not say that these are the most efficient ones out there. However, being able to bring back a Wrath, an extra turn if it was countered or if it was discarded for whatever reason, bring back a Counterspell, bring back a Fog, bring back a draw if you need it. It is only 5 cards, but the point is you're going to be able to get more value out of the deck. Having, a pseudo Snapcaster in there is kind of nice. Speaking of, let's talk about some Counterspells. It's a small stack, but they have some fun uses. Rewind. Counter target spell, untap 4 lands. Now, that's going to also go, where are you? With Unwind. 2 and a blue, counter target non-creature spell, untap 3 lands. In here, lands aren't just lands. Lands can also be creatures, so you can use these, counter spell, untap your guys, give them a sort of vigilance. All of a sudden, they cast something before combat or someone else casts something on their turn. You can untap your guys, and then you won't be as open. Negate. Believe it or not, some of these spells, you actually want to counter Wrath of God. You want to counter things that blow up creatures. All of yours blow up non-land creatures or non-land permanents. You need to make sure your lands don't go. Disdainful Stroke, again, countering most Wrath spells. Can also counter a Titan if needed. Dissolve, 3 mana. Counterspell, scry 1. It's fine for the cost. It does what it needs to do. Insidious Will. I was alluding this earlier with the Part the Water Veil. If by some odd means you happen to awaken or simply cast it, this will allow you to copy that. Utterly hilarious if you can, make your own time stretch, but it's an option there. For 4 mana, countering a spell, redirecting a spell, or copying a spell, none of those are worth 4 mana. However, 4 mana to have the option is absolutely worth it. You would play Cryptic Command if you could afford it for under 25, but this is a close copy to Cryptic Command. It does a lot of lifting. Fuel for the Cause. 4 mana, counter target spell, Proliferate. Obviously, you're just going to, put an extra counter on all those lands. If you go wide, this is counter spell plus Overrun. You are going to be able to make your guys bigger, and obviously that's important. If you're only getting 2 counters out of it, it's not that great, but at the same time, you're still getting bigger guys, and considering this is all about, having the biggest guys or having the guys survive the most, it works. Dismiss, 4 mana, counterspell, draw a card. Moving on. Counterspell, 2 mana. Muddle of Mixture, 2 mana, counter target instant or sorcery. The ability to transmute for 2. There'll be a couple other spells, but that whole Disturbing Wave, this can find you one of your Wraths. This can find other key components. Since this is like I think it's like $1.75 give take. It seems like a lot, but the fact is you have a tutor that's also a counterspell. There's a reason that this common demands that price. Arcane Denial. It's splashable. It counters a spell. You'll get a draw. They get 2 draws. But at the same time, there are certain spells you can't let resolve. This is actually the reason I almost wanted to play this deck. Like this is like one of like 3 cards that made me want to play it. Tefari's Response, 1 in the blue. Counter target spell or ability an opponent controls that targets a land you control. If a permanent's ability is countered this way, destroy that permanent, and you draw 2 cards. You start nailing their counter spells. If you hit a Dust Bowl, you hit an Inferno Titan. You can take out things. Someone decides they want to start sniping. No one ever plans for this. This really is like the Spanish Inquisition moment. No one plans for it. It's almost always a blowout. At the very least, you're getting 2 cards out of the deal. Awesome. Now, what about ramp? You're going to say, oh, all those Awaken spells cost a fortune. They do. Here's an interesting part, though. I'm only running 4 pieces of artifact ramp. Wayfarer's Bauble, 1 to drop, 2 to sacrifice. Go find a basic. Azure Signet. Well, we need mana fixing. It's cheap to drop. It works. And then Mindstone and Hedron Archive. Most of those blowing up the world things blow up non-land permanents, which means if you run a lot of mana rocks, you're going to blow them up. These at least can become cards. So if you know you're going to have a big turn, you have enough mana, you can sack them to get some card draw. If they get blown up, you're not out the worst, but at the same time, they're not dead in the water. Once we get the Azorius Locket, I'm sure I'll end up running that as well. Moving forward, these are kind of the outliers. They don't really have a category, so we'll go from there. Eerie Interlude, 2 and a white. It's an instant. Exile any number of target creatures you control. Return those cards to the battlefield under your owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. It is better to have your lands go out as creatures and come back as lands without counters than it is to lose your lands. It's just that simple. So it's Wrath Protection. You could get in some bad combats. It would work. Sacred Ground, 1 in white. Whenever a spell or an ability an opponent controls causes a land to be put into your graveyard from play, return that land to play. It won't come back as a creature, but the point is you're not losing lands. And obviously, the point here is if they shoot one of your lands, which are colorless, you definitely need to keep your land count up. It's because it's very risky to have lands that are creatures. Now, Trail of Evidence, Jace's Sanctum. Let me get them in shot. They're both arguably expensive because you have 3 mana that does nothing initially and 4 mana that does nothing initially. Trail of Evidence, whenever you cast an instant sorcery, Investigate, you make clue tokens. It's worth knowing that they're clue tokens, they're artifacts, so you will blow them up if you blow up the universe. That's worth remembering. Jace's Sanctum. Instants and sorceries cost 1 less. Whenever you cast an instant sorcery, scry 1. Not bad. Making it cost less is the part that really matters here. Scrying 1, I'm not going to say no to it, but at the same time, I'm not going to get in a counterspell war to make this resolve. If you're in a slower game, if you're in a game where you can tap out early, these absolutely will do some lifting for you. I'm not going to break my back to play them. 2 more cards. Planner Birth. Put all basics from all graveyards into play under their owner's control tapped. You lose lands in combat early, you lose them due to some, multiple creature kill, whatever. This is going to get you back in the game. For 2 mana and sorcery, absolutely worth it. 2 Arms, hilarious card. 1 in a white, untap all creatures you control and draw a card. Well, you get to untap your creatures, which are also lands. You can actually go from having 2 mana open to quite a few mana if you went wide and you have, 5, 6, 7 creatures. It will catch people off guard. All of a sudden, you have blockers, you have mana open if you need a counter spell, or if you need to use some of your instant speed draw spells. Fun card to have. So these are like the creature buffs, I will call them. Brave the Sands. There we go. 1 in a white enchantment. Creatures you control have vigilance. Each creature you control can block an additional creature. There is a creature version of this that's very similar. It gives creature +1/+1 counters vigilance. I like the enchantment better because of the ability for them to double block. There are ways for you to keep your creatures. If you have a 6/6, it can block 2 1/1 tokens or 2 2/2s, so on and so forth. You get the idea. The ability to stay alive is a hard aspect for this deck. Terra Eternal pairs well with that. All lands are indestructible. Well, keeps you moving. Genju of the Falls and Genju of the Fields. You have 2 enchantments. This one, it can turn a plains into a 2/5 creature with lifelink. This one can turn an island into a 3/2 flyer. Now, you have the ability to keep those counters on them, so these are actually good baselines. They get bigger and bigger and bigger. Wall of Resurgence, 2 and a white, 0/6 Defender Wall. If you're going to cut a card, you'll probably end up cutting this. I still like having in the deck. It puts 3 +1/+1 counters on a land, becomes a creature. It just kind of doubles you up. It's a nice little safety net, but it is disposable. Anak Bonkin gives all creatures a +1/+1 first strike. Obviously, it will give itself first strike if you use Outlast, but giving those guys first strike, having block multiple times, it makes them more durable in combat. The Herald of Secret Streams, +1/+1 counters are now unblockable. Okay, that's one of your overrun finishes. Moving on. And finally, the Abzan Falconer. For 3 mana, 2/3 Outlast, creatures with +1/+1 have flying, so you have backup to evasion. It's going to do some extra lifting there. This guy is actually one of the nice little synergies. I've seen lists without it. You don't have to run it. I love it. 1 in a blue, it's a 1/1 Spell Shaper. Now, it is a color shifted 2 in a blue tap Harrow. You sacrifice a land, go off, find 2 basics, put in play untapped. Not only is this ramp, but this will, if you use this enough time, you'll fuel your Planet of Birth and then be able to bring all those lands back. It definitely can do some work. I just like that if you get out early, you'll be able to, get further in the game quicker. Here's a section I'm going to call Pinpoint. This is essentially your 1-for-1s. Swords of Plowshare, 1 mana, it's about $1. Sometimes you need to take out a commander and you do it at instant speed. Reality Shift, same thing, blue, 2 mana, it exiles it. Very important when you start seeing a lot of these Theros gods. It's the same reason I'm running Forsake the Worldly, exile an artifact or enchantment, and can be cycled. You can choose to run Return to Dust or I can't remember the new Ravnica one. It just depends on your meta. For me, since I'm in such a wide open with a bunch of casual decks, having cycling is actually worthwhile to me. Collective Effort, 3 mana. This thing does a lot of things at once. The ability to destroy target creature with power 4 or greater, awesome. Destroy an enchantment, awesome. Put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Obviously works better in the go wide strategies. The Escalate is tapping a creature, effectively probably tapping one of your main lands. So this doesn't really cost you all that much. You can use it for 1 ability. I tend to use it for 2. I haven't had it really an opening to go for 3 yet, but obviously the ability is there. Rapid Hybridization, just like Swords of Plowshare, but it's in blue. 1 mana, takes out a commander, takes out a problem creature, takes out a combo piece. Moving forward, almost there. Alright, so, draw spells. Blue Sun Zenith. Yes, you can play Jace's Ingenuity if you really got a good budget. This one isn't that expensive anymore. X, triple blue, target player draws X card, shuffle into your library. Even if X is 3, shuffle it in, and then you might see it later, it's still value. You don't always need to go for X equals 50. This does work. Tezzeret's Gambit, 3 and a Phyrexian blue. So most likely you're going to pay 3 and 2 life. Draw 2 cards and proliferate. Once you get counters on once you get counters on your lands, you're gonna just draw 2 cards and do more. This card is very powerful in this deck, not as broken as in an Infect deck, but it does stuff. Fact or Fiction. This runs for about 75 cents, give take now. We all roughly know how powerful it is. Instant speed, you're gonna see anywhere from probably 2 to 4 cards, maybe 1 if it's the best card ever. I'm not even talking about picking on people, but this card will get you some advantage at instant speed. Collective Research, 2 and a blue, draw 3 cards, discard a land, or discard 2 cards. Both abilities are fine. You're running 39 lands, so it's probably going to draw you a few. Think Twice, 1 in a blue, flashback, 2 in a blue, draw 1 card. Now, normally this card isn't that great. If you discard off Compulsive Research, you discard it off your Spell Shaper. But the big thing is it's flashback, so you can get 2 uses of it for Noyan Dar. You can get some effort there. Telling Time, 1 in a blue, look at 3 cards, 1 to hand, 1 on top, 1 on the bottom. It digs, it's cheap, it works. And then the original Impulse. Look at 4, take 1 of the 3 go on the bottom. Almost there. Alright, so last bit is going to be our non-basics and our basics. So Myriad Landscape, it's a sort of ramp spell. It's one of the few lands that come into play tapped. Calciform Pool, storage land on color. Very useful for building up for those big turns. I've thought about cutting it for budget, but the fact that this is what can get you to that Awaken Time Walk, this is one of those cards. Now, you're going to laugh. Cascading Cataracts. It filters for 5 mana. Why would you want that? It's indestructible. Indestructible +1/+1 counters. Same reason we run Darksteel Citadel. Indestructible with +1/+1 counters does a lot of stuff. You then have some common fetches. Warped Landscape, Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, bunch of basics. This deck can come in at 25. I'm going to tell you now, if you make one addition, it's going to be Reliquary Tower. Unlike other decks, Spellbook won't work, Library Lang won't work because you're blowing stuff up, bouncing stuff all the time. Because of Blue Sun Zenith, because of the ability to get some extra cards in there, I would definitely try to get one of those into the budget. It's about $1.50 to $2. It's not necessary. I did cut it for budget's sake, but I very much like it. Really quick, notable additions and or changes. So that's the original deck. Royal Spout. Big deal here is that sorcery. Yes, you get to put the creature on top. Yes, it has Awakening and for 4 counters. If you need a cheaper piece of spot removal or you feel like you want to try it out, it's okay. I cut it because it's not instant speed. Niblis of Frost, 2 double blue, 3/3 flyer, prowess, already doing great. Whenever you cast an instant sorcerer spell, tap target creature and opponent controls, that creature does untap during its control's next untap step. I'm trying to fit him in. Almost all the budget lists have this in there because it does a lot of heavy lifting. Render Silent, this will be probably a swap in for like Arcane Denial. Counter target spell, its controller can't cast spells this turn. In budget metas, not so huge. In anything where you'd see more Storm, or you can see that people have a lot of mana and they're playing out something small, this will time walk them. $3 board wipe, that's why it's not in there. 6 in a blue, Undaunted, so it costs 1 less. So in a 4-player game, the thing's only going to cost 4. Return all non-land permanents to their owner's hand. You have so many, I don't need a $3 one to make it work. Karn's Temporal Sundering. If you really want to go the route of Legendary, it's a Legendary Time Walk, and you get to bounce a card. It's cuttable, it's playable, they're both there. Darksteel Ingot, the bigger problem is that you're also returning to hand, so this isn't as valuable, but it is an option. So all that said and done, I hope Noyan Dar is still intriguing to you. You have to understand this is a sliding scale. Sometimes you tap out all the time for your nukes. Other times you have to do the slow roll. You're trying to play the blue-white game. This is a deck that you have to understand it is a blue-white control deck. If you do not understand that it is control and play it as control, you try to run out as aggro. If you run out Noyan Dar on 5 mana with no protection and he dies, you probably just handed the game off. You need him to resolve, probably with an instant or sorcery castable in hand, so he might not be getting play until you have 7 mana or more. Play smart. The deck's very rewarding. It's a lot of fun. For 25 bucks, I haven't found too many blue-white decks that give me such a unique experience. The fact that you're playing nuke-based control is a lot of fun. After the 3rd or 4th time you blow up the world, it can get a little redundant, but for me, I just kind of giggle because it makes people play more conservative, which means your lands will then take over. Hope this has been helpful. Ask me any questions in the comments. I'm more than happy to touch base.